We have scripture readings today. The Torah reading is kitzah, which means when you elevate the head, it's really counting. Okay? And it's in Shemot, or in Exodus 30, verse 11, 34, I think that's the end of the chapter, I'm not sure. The Haftarah is 1 Kings 18. This is a great story about the big cook-off.
Yeah.
And the Brit Hadashah is Mark chapter 7 through 8, and this is going to be my message, chapter 7. Oh, it's message time. Okay, I'm going to try to keep this one under an hour and a half, all right? See how well I do, okay?
Bless you, Rabbi.
Anytime.
I got your time.
This is a continuation, again, of our messages that we've been dealing with. We're going to talk to Israel. And who is Israel? It is the 12 tribes of the sons of Jacob, and the sojourners or the foreigners who join themselves to Israel, the Gerim. That'd be us, right?
Amen.
It's us.
That's us.
At least.
Yahweh, open our eyes that we might see wonders from your Torah. And continued from last week, again, we're in the upright ostrich. And this is Mark chapter 7. And this is Yeshua is going to teach us about man-made traditions. What I've done for this message, I've taken a 12-page paper and condensed it down to this little itty-bitty thing. So I'm leaving out a lot, but we're going to get to the benefit of the doubt, or the benefit of the material here. Okay, and Mark chapter 7 is used by many to cancel the Levitical food laws. Also, so is Acts chapter 10 about Peter's vision of the spiders and icky crawly creepy things and oysters and other disgusting stuff. So the question is, does Yeshua cancel the Levitical food laws? All right, this message will just talk about those, the verses in Mark 7 from 1 to 23. Now, Mark chapter 7 verse 1 opens up with the Pharisees being up there where Yeshua and his followers were in the Galilee. We'll look at a map in a minute. They came to visit him. Now, Mark 6:53, we see that Yeshua and his people are all in that area. That's north, a long way. Okay, here's a map of the whole area, and they went from there, Jerusalem, up to there. Now, I'm thinking that's about 80 miles. How long would it take us? Hour and a half? Easy? Hour, 45 minutes, stop for a snack, stop at the pilot up there. How long does it take to get from here to Nashville on the interstate? It's just quick. It probably took him several days. I don't know how far you can walk or what the roads were like at that time, but they weren't good. And you got bandits and bad guys and all kinds of other stuff up there. So it took them a long time to get there. I need a rabbit trail here. This is important. About the Pharisees. These guys get a bad rap all the time, and they didn't earn it. The Pharisees, during the late Second Temple era, now really that's from Ezra all the way till after the destruction of the temple, and a few years after that. The Pharisees are really called the Perushim, and this means separatists. They separated themselves. They set themselves apart from everybody else, the common people. They regarded themselves as the practitioners of the principles of holiness that was described in the priestly code of Ezra. Again, all the way back here. There's a whole mess of history in this, involved in this. I don't want to go into it, but there's a lot of wonderful things. They were sticklers for Torah. They called themselves the Holy Community of Jerusalem. And I think an offshoot, we were talking about the Essenes earlier today, I think an offshoot was the Essenes. The common people looked to the Pharisees for religious leadership because they were more learned in the written and the oral Torah. I gotta tell you, they didn't have a lot of books back then. Amazon wasn't around. They couldn't go on YouTube and look at all the videos. So they had to go to somebody who knew. Now these people, and I'm talking about the common people, they were able to absorb the words and keep them in their minds. When Yeshua says something and they remember, oh, that's in so-and-so, they knew where it was from. They may not do chapter and verse because they didn't do chapter and verse back then. But they knew where it came from. They knew what it said. The Pharisees were the fundamentalists among the normative Judaism of the first century. And that's a quote from Stuart Darwin, Rabbi Stuart Darwin. They were it. They were skillful in the exact interpretation of the Torah. The written one and the oral Torah. They knew it all. And the Pharisees were waiting for the Messiah. They knew the Messiah would come at that particular time frame in history when Yeshua shows up. Daniel chapter 9 points them to that time in history. They were waiting for it. They have the right to investigate this guy Yeshua. They searched the scriptures diligently to discover if this Yeshua man from Nazareth was a Messiah. They will go talk to him. They have to. So it's not wrong that they went up there to find out what he was up to. Now he'd been up there for a while. If you read Mark chapter 6 and so on, he's up there talking to a whole lot of people about lots of stuff. So they went to find out what he was talking about. All right, back to the feature presentation. We were from here to here. Some of the Pharisees and the scribes went from Jerusalem to Galilee to see Yeshua. Mark chapter 7 verse 1 says, and the Pharisees and some of the scribes assembled to him, having come from Jerusalem. It was a big deal. The Perusian from Jerusalem, well, okay, this is my contention that not all of them were against Yeshua. Many of them may have been just plain neutral. Is this another one of them weirdos that's claiming something that he ain't? There was a lot of people at that time in history running around claiming to be something. Messiah, who knows? They wanted to know. Okay, what was the whole real issue, chapter 7? It was not about food. Food. There's clean stuff, that's food. Them cow things, them chicken things, lambs. Well, if you can get buffalo there, I don't think there were a whole lot of them. All of the deer species, they're the same thing as the goat species and the sheep species. And the cow, and fish with scales and fins. Right?
Right.
That's F-O-O-D, food.
Right.
The other things that are called unclean are not food. Dogs and cats are not food. All Chinese restaurant jokes aside. They're not. Horses, camels, elephants, rats, and mice. Ew. Sorry. Neither are catfish. The real issue was the traditions of the elders. The real issue was Yeshua's followers sat down to eat. Now, I'm going to say they did wash their hands. Most people do, especially if you got stuff on your hands, dirty, you're going to go wash your hands off. But they didn't do it according to the traditions of the elders, which says all kinds of stuff. That was 2 pages right there. All kinds of stuff, how you hold your hand and pour water, and boy, it gets silly. But it is how you ritually clean. It's the same thing with mikvahs. You take a tevilah, an immersion in the mikvah, in the water of the mikvah, to become ritually clean. If you're already, dirty, clean yourself there and then go do the mikvah. Yeshua's response to those Perushim is in Mark 6. And he says that Yeshayahu prophesied concerning you hypocrites. Pretty strong language.
7 verse 6.
Pardon me?
7 verse 6.
What did I say? Something else?
6.
Okay, 7 verse 6. I probably said something else. I do that. Yeshua's response, this people, that'd be them. He's quoting what Yeshayahu says, this people respect me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. They do, excuse me, in vain do they worship me, teaching as teachings the commands of men. Forsaking the commands of Elohim, you hold fast to the traditions of men. Let's go over that again. In vain do they worship me, teaching as teachings the commands of men. In other words, they are elevating the oral man-made Torah and putting it on top of the written Torah. Now they have good reasons for this, believe me. There's this philosophy about fences around the Torah which prevents the common people from violating the Torah. Unfortunately, the fence gets so thick, after you get enough layers on it, you can't see the Torah. You're just looking at the fence. It's a serious charge that Yeshua is placing against these men that came to talk to him. You'd think he'd be like a politician. You ever see them guys? They'll go talk to the union people and they'll say, oh, we're all for your union. Then they'll go talk to manufacturers and say, oh, don't worry about it, we'll step on the union for you. All right. Anyway, this is a prophecy or even a judgment on the Perushim. He's judging them and he's saying to them that which they hold the most dear, the Torah, is what they reject. Got it? By the way, Yeshua continues, nullifying the word of Elohim through your tradition which you have handed down. The Christian church does this too. And here's what goes on is you get a denomination comes along and says something that some guy decided was, this is going to make us more pious than them over there. And now there's an oral command that actually is going to wipe out a biblical command. One of them, Sunday worship. Now ain't nothing wrong with worshiping on Sunday. Yes, true, absolutely. But it doesn't replace the Sabbath, period.
Amen.
We've talked about this. There's no need to discuss it further. It's a done deal. And all of the excuses are all man-made traditions. And they don't cut it. They don't hold water. They don't hold anything, for crying out loud. They do nullify the word of Elohim, throwing out all of Yahweh's feasts and replacing them with other stuff. Now, here's Yeshua standing there. He has just spoken to the Pharisees and he's put them in their place. Now, I'm not saying this is like really negative, he told them off or anything like that. He just said it like it was. And if any of them had an ear to hear, and an eye to see, they'd have seen what he was talking about, and it wouldn't have been a problem. So he's going to go talk to the people now. So he turns and he says, there is no matter that enters a man from outside, which is able to defile him, make him unclean. But it is what comes out of him that defiles the man. Heart condition, yes. And it isn't about food. Yeshua said, it's from King Jimmy, okay, you got a King James, this is the words in the King James. Whatsoever thing from without entereth into the man, it cannot defile him, because it entereth not into his heart, but into his belly, and goes out in the drogut. Draft.
Drought.
The toilet.
Drought.
Drain.
Purging all meats.
Purging all meat is added.
Got it? Let's stop. Really, I mean it. Stop right there. This was something that really made me angry when I really read it for the first time, after reading it thousands of times before. There is a deliberate false teaching that justifies open rebellion and lawlessness. Deliberate in the books we call Bibles, the books we trust. We trust with our future, our eternal lives.
Yes.
There is an agenda. And I have said that all translations are an agenda translation. Every one of them. The agenda of some is to make sure that they get the word delivered to English-speaking people the most accurate way they can. I know the Scriptures does that. There's a whole lot of versions that are really good. And then there are the others. We don't want to throw out the Old Testament. Well, we're going to keep them parts about tithing, though. And we're going to replace it with something else. I don't even want to call it the New Testament. It's the modified New Testament. Yeshua never said that stuff. Neither did Paul. Gee whiz, give him a break. All right, verse 19 in several of the versions, biblical versions, that's chapter 7, verse 19, and some of the perversions. The Scriptures version says, because it does not enter into his heart, but his stomach, and is eliminated, thus purging all foods. The food has no quality to do anything to you except nourish you. Goes in, comes out. Fact. King James, we've already read that. Purging all meats. It's gone. You eat it, it's gone. Remember, food is not, you know that list of stuff? But it is this other list. The New Revised Standard Version shows up, and it says, since it enters not into the heart but the stomach and goes out into the sewer, correct? And then there's a parenthetical statement. Thus he declared all foods clean. Where'd that come from? Now, they actually have it as a parenthetical statement. It was a marginal note in some manuscripts. You know, some guy's doing a manuscript and he writes over on the side, maybe in pencil, and he says something. It's not a part of the Scripture. It's a marginal note. Oh, I just said that. It's not a part of the original Scripture. I should follow my thing here instead of doing it myself. The complete Jewish Bible, not for the most part I like this one, but Dr. Stern sometimes does such strange things. This is a great, learned man. And he throws it back in there. For it doesn't go into his heart, but into his stomach and passes out into the latrine, in parentheses. Thus he declared all foods ritually clean. I met him. He's a fantastic man. He knows more stuff than I could ever know. the NIV, not inspired. If it doesn't go into his, for it doesn't go into his heart, but into his stomach and then out of his body. Then they leave it in parentheses. In saying this, Jesus declared all foods clean. If he was saying food's clean. It is.
Right.
The other stuff isn't. It isn't food. Otherwise, eat your dog. And a cat. You know, have a rat souffle along beside it. He didn't declare everything that could be eaten as food. Then again, the question is, what is food? We already asked that. The Living Bible. You know, I liked this when it first came out. I thought it was pretty cool. But they use a parenthetical statement. It says, the food doesn't come in contact with your heart, but only passes through the digestive system. Hey, that's a language every one of us can understand, if they just put a period there and left it. But they're saying that by saying this, he showed that every kind of food is kosher. That is really stretching that marginal note a lot. Amplified. Anybody ever read the Amplified Bibles? Okay. They use a lot of the brackets and stuff. Well, it adds, that is, abolishing the ceremonial distinction of the Levitical laws? It really says this. I got it electronically off of, I think, Logos or something. I had to go find Amplified and look to see that it actually said that. Wow, that is really stretching a marginal note. And then the Message. This is a New Age Bible that came out, and a lot of people like it because it's in good modern English. Except its theology is terrible. I don't know if you shouldn't, maybe you could use it for wrapping fish, but I don't know what you could do with this thing. It doesn't enter your heart, but your stomach. Good. Works its way through the intestines and finally is flushed. Excellent. That took care of the dietary quibbling. Jesus was saying that all foods are fit to eat. Therefore, according to the Message, we can have a ham sandwich and we're fine.
Do that again.
When I started studying this and I found this, that's what I wanted to do. I'll see it again. I like this guy. And that's what it was. This hurt me. Because I had followed this for so long. All right, what Yeshua's really saying, the food we eat, with or without clean hands, there's nothing to do. It passes right through our body and has no effect on the heart condition. Ta-da. 20, verses 20 through 23 make this real clear, even to the most casual observer. Just the slightest glance at the rest of that verse, or those verses, and you got what he was talking about. All right, my conclusions here. The topic is placing man's traditions above Yahweh's commandments. That's real serious. Our churches, Judah does this, churches do it, and look at all the wacko things out there that have turned something. Some guy finds a gold batch of tablets buried in the dirt, and he comes up with something that ain't. And people following him to the death. They're placing that guy's traditions or his, whatever's going on in his head. And there's so many other people that have created whole things that shouldn't be. It's not in the Word.
Satan hath truth.
Pardon me?
Satan hath truth.
Satan's half-truths. And a half-truth is a half-lie? Or is it all lie? That's all lie. Okay, Yeshua's not saying there's anything wrong with man's traditions, even if it's overly legalistic. There's nothing wrong with washing your hands that way. I understand in Israel they have these hand-washing things all over the place. Guys go up there, they put their hand in there and say the blessing and all that other stuff. Fine, nothing wrong. And he's not against the traditions. It applies to both Jewish and Christian traditions. If one of our traditions replaces or overrides Yahweh's command, then we need to reevaluate that tradition and bring it in line with Yahweh's word. Duh, simple. Super, super simple. Yeshua did not change the Levitical food command. Didn't do it. But it is a reminder to us to evaluate the thing we're fixing to do. Oh, I ran out of that. All right. Once we know the truth, we're never the same. That's the problem.
There you go.
And that's the thing that
Praise Yahweh.
Baruch Hashem Yahweh. To be continued.